Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Upset Podcast. We're here once again with another topic we're not necessarily happy to discuss. This is one that should upset all of us, and it deals with a lot of the hate, the crimes that we're seeing against certain communities. And GP, you're going to lead us in this discussion. We know it's kind of one of those areas that you try to keep your cool with, but it's just something we need to discuss a little bit more. So let's jump right into it.
We're upset today. A gunman last week on Tuesday killed 6 Asian women and 2 others in an attack in a spa in the metropolitan Atlanta area, and it's just crazy that this has happened again. And the real reason why many of us are upset is that it seems like the police officer, the spokesperson, was humanizing the
Yeah,
terrorist,
yeah.
and we already see them dehumanizing the victims. And it's a narrative that we already know, that we're so familiar with. But how do you guys feel about this? I mean, this is not a new occurrence, but this is crazy. This is America. And yet we are at this juncture again. So I'm going to let you all chime in, but I'm mad already.
Mm. Yeah, I'm mad too. Now, just to your point about the police officer, I saw this meme where the police officer's like holding the gunman and saying he had a bad day, which is the comment that he made that kind of caused a lot of outrage. And it's like, how insensitive of a comment is that to the victims? Families right now saying, "Oh, you lost your family member because this guy had a bad day. We need to console him." It's just that whole narrative where, like you said, the people that we need to be sympathetic towards are the ones that we're pushing to the side and trying to give a reason why this happened. Like it's maddening to me.
Mm.
Well,
I think it even goes a little bit deeper. It is, how does one identify with a person who does something wrong? A white person seeing a white person doing something wrong has to find something that justifies the behavior because I identify with that person. So
Yeah.
it couldn't be because he is a bad person. So he had a bad day because I identify with him. So therefore, I have to explain his behavior as aberrant to what I am and what I represent. It is not like me. So this is the same kind of thing that allows a person to look at the news, and when they see someone who looks like them doing something, they say, well, he was crazy, or well, this was wrong. But if they see somebody who looks like you doing it, they say, you know how those people are. And
Mhm.
so he
And
was separating this person's behavior from his person's identity. He had a bad day. This isn't normal for a white man to do this. And so he had a bad day. Therefore, we must look at that as aberrant. And the fact that it's connected to whiteness, it is not a normative part of whiteness.
And the very police officer who said those words was found to have racist comments toward Asians on his Facebook, and he's no longer the spokesperson. And so
Oh,
what you said
wow.
is exactly right, Tally.
Wow,
Mm.
I
well,
didn't see that
I
part.
read
Thank
one
you.
report where the FBI, I guess, in an effort to calm things down, said that they did not find anything that would suggest it was a hate crime against
Mhm.
Asians. That's right.
Right. Yeah. Tried to
I
spin it.
didn't believe that at all. I don't believe that report. Um,
Yeah.
it may be, I was talking with someone else about this. I said, well, maybe the guy hated spas or hated,
Well, they said he had
what these
sexual
things
addiction or something.
represent,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He was also a believer, a Christian.
Yeah, a member of a large church in the area, and they quickly disavowed the behavior and took him off of their website, where he looked like a quote all American boy, rather than simply owning it as a criminal act. And the idea of we have to separate ourselves from this behavior that this person did because we don't want it to be identified with us is an act of denial
Mm.
that prevents people from making the changes that they need to make.
but this is not the first time this has happened. When we look at Charleston in the Carolinas,
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
Dylan in and shot 9 people in Wednesday night prayer meeting, I actually was right in a prayer meeting,
and after what kills me the most is how they capture them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you do the T-bone, you capture them. If it was anyone else, and maybe here I am, maybe I'm in the same category as what they're saying, and I don't have any problem saying if it was a black person who they would come, he wouldn't even make it. They would shoot him before the time, whether it was Asian or not. That's where I'm at. With Dylan Roof, what do they do with him? They took him to Burger King. Or something like that, right? On the ride down or something like that. They fed him. I mean, this is absolutely it's crazy. I think that we try to find a problem. I think it's human, by the way, to try to find out the answer to the question why. I think that it's human for us to do that. But on the flip side of it, to turn victims into the faults, he had a sexual addiction. I mean, can we stay there for a second? You had a sexual addiction, so it gives you the opportunity to go in and shoot up all those people. And to me, America, we have not really moved. It's just that the blanket is taken off.
Right. Absolutely. Right. There really hasn't been any improvement in that. And in addition to the obviously deranged individual to take his hate that far, in addition to that, you have police departments that are racist. You have courtrooms that are racist. You have judges that are racist. And I'll tell you, our system is, as they used to say on the street, is jacked up. This is a multifaceted issue. It really is. It's unfortunate that the Asian community would feel so worried. I mean, the report I heard this morning on the BBC was that there are Asian communities that are now afraid to leave their homes.
Absolutely.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true. And and we have to point out that this isn't like the first incident. Like, we're all aware of this because it's in the news and it's so tragic, but Asian Americans are experiencing this kind of hatred on a daily basis. I mean, not be to the extent of, slaughter like this, but, hearing some of their stories about how people trying to rip their mask off. I read an article about a doctor in Oregon. She's a cardiologist trying to see a patient, and when they realized she was Asian, they were trying to rip her mask off and, telling them, go back to, where you came from. And we have to go back to the comments made by our former president, which a lot of people, it still amazes me, but a lot of people took anything that he said out of his mouth as the truth and ran with it. And once he coined it, the China virus.
Yeah. Well, the Hong Kong flu, or
the
Kung flu,
Like those are marching orders for people to start, targeting their hate towards this community, and the things that they've had to deal with is just absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. But in people's minds, they feel justified. They feel like we need to let them know, this is your fault, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And it's so far from the truth. That's the sad part about it.
But the crimes have not been always publicized, but I mean, from people getting cut in the face with switchblades, box cutters, getting spit on, getting attacked, even in progressive states like California and New York, these areas that are considered very, very progressive and forward, blue states, these crimes are happening in these areas. And so a lot of Black folks are kind of on the fence, because we know what it's like to be attacked and to be dehumanized and to be discriminated against and attacked. However, there are many Black folks who have some animosity towards the Asians. It might be based on how we've been treated in the past, or I don't know what it is, but there are some who feel like this is not our fight. Leave us alone. When we were marching in the streets for Black Lives Matter, you weren't there with us. So why should we stand for you? How do you guys feel about this mentality?
Well, I'm reminded of the words of Cornel West after the 2001, the 9/11 bombing, and he used the N-word in such a way that it was so appropriate. He says that we have to teach people what it means to be treated like an N-word. He says, he would see these little blonde girls and little braids and ponytails saying, why do they hate us? Why are they so against us? What have we done? Why did they treat us so badly? And Cornel West says it's now our time to show them what that feels like and how to exist through it. The Asian community has been quite removed when it comes to seeking Black justice, because for a variety of reasons. But you know, you can never set your standard by the misbehavior or the failures of others. And I think that as Black people who have seen injustice paraded in bold relief through our lives, that it's time for us now to come to the conclusion: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that is, when we see injustice, as Martin Luther King would say, anywhere, we have to recognize it as being possible everywhere and stand up against it, and then straighten out our stuff with our Asian brothers and sisters after we stand up against the common injustice that threatens all of us.
Absolutely.
Growing up in New York, I think one of the sentiments also, GP, is, you know, exploitation of our communities. You know, the Chinese restaurants they're not even restaurants. They don't even want us to be around. So they're takeouts. You know what I'm saying? So it's not even, you're not sitting with them, or they're not serving you. It's the same thing with our dry cleaners in our neighborhoods. They own the fruit stands in our neighborhoods, and
beauty supply. Don't forget the beauty supply store.
Beauty supply stores in our neighborhood. They're the ones that's selling us the hair and the nails but you see, I think what goes deeper with this is that if America never has if they can't call out. Hey, if they can't call out what they have to call out, then everybody gets to the place of doing it themselves. This happened in the 1920s, I believe it was, with the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima. And remember, California is on the other side of the world, where they from the Pacific comes up this way, and we've put them in concentration camps, and nobody said anything about it. Just the same way we have Mexican kids in cages or in penitentiary, and no one's saying anything about it. How could we be surprised in a situation where we are now, where we looking at it as an injustice, when we've been seeing this all the way through our lives? It has never gotten any better. It's never. The only thing that makes us stronger is educating ourselves. That's the only thing that's going to make us stronger, because it didn't change with Barack Obama as president, right? Nothing changed. It didn't even change, right? It's even heightened. So when I look at something like this, it bothers me. And let me tell you what else social media is doing. Social media is showing Black people against Asians. Right, just to even the ground out, right? I mean, yes, we do have, it's not just white people, but it's Black people also, but they heighten it on social media so that it could be like we're all against them. Come on, man.
Yeah. I think we just need to get to the point where, like was said earlier, injustice is injustice, hate is hate, regardless of what race is being targeted to at that particular time. You have to speak against it at all costs. And sometimes we get into those little mindsets. Well, listen, we got our own fight. Let them fight their own fight. But we really can't. We really will get nowhere if everyone is trying to only fight in their corner, because it's something that's affecting all of us. You know, it's like, what's next? Next month, you know, if something happens to our Spanish communities, are we going to say, oh, well, that's them? No, it's anytime we see it happen to any particular group of people, even beyond race, we have an obligation to speak against it and say it's just not right.
Well, wasn't it dangerous with Martin Luther King? Martin Luther King left from racism to poor, right? And it was like, okay, here he go again. We already got this civil rights thing going. Now he's helping out poor people, which poor people just surpasses Black people altogether, just poor people. And it angers people when you put them on the same playing ground, right? So here's one thing I wanted to share that bothers me throughout the whole thing, is that he targeted Asian spas that were far away from each other. Why that bothers me is that you had a bad day, you got to have time to think between the close ones. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, you mess up in this spa, or you're like, man, I got to get my head together. No, you're traveling 40 minutes or more from one place to the other which you're saying you had a bad day. No, that thing is in your spirit. It's in your
Man.
blood. I don't care how you look at it. It makes me angry because the flip side of it is that we look at this kid, and I'm sorry to go back here again because I think this is where my heart races on. We go
He's
back
not a kid,
to this
though.
kid. Well, right. We go back to this man, right, who bought the guns on the same day. Hold on, but we can't vote on the same day. You can't register and vote on the same day in Georgia now, but you can register and buy a gun on the same day.
He bought the gun the same day he did the shooting?
Same
Yeah.
day. It's reported it's on the same day.
Wow.
I mean, this is America.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a bad day. That sounds like a conspiratorial operation there.
Sure, yeah.
Mhm.
Come on.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show, What Would You Do?
Yeah.
It's something that my kids have found recently, which it tackles, of course, different social issues, things that happen in the news, and they recreate these situations for, to see what people would do if they witnessed these types of things. And what I noticed, one of them that we watched recently was about a group of young Black teens who were sitting in a restaurant, and the waitress was telling them that they had to prepay because, and this was an incident that really happened. And so they were looking to see what other people who overheard this waitress sharing this would say, like what they would, if they would address the waitress or whatnot. 9 times out of 10, of course, we didn't see all the situations. People were speaking out saying, why are you treating them that way? We didn't have to prepay. Why? And the lady would say, because you know how those people are. And so she was being very overt, but that's exactly how it took place. And it was refreshing to see the amount of people, Black and white, who spoke against it, even to the point where they were ready to leave the restaurant if that type of treatment was taking place, and they would go to the manager. And, as I watched this with my children, I thought about this opportunity because a lot of hate is passed down, hate is taught. And I said, this is my obligation for me as a parent to say to my children, please, if this is something that you witness, be one of those people that will speak up. This is why it's important to speak up. This is wrong, regardless of who it's happening to. When you see it happening, you need to say something. And I appreciated that opportunity to share with my children, because I realized that a lot of the reasons why we're still in this situation is because too many people are staying silent when they see these things happen. Too many people are turning a blind eye. Too many people are saying, oh, that's bad. I wish they didn't have to go through that, but that's not my place to say something, or I don't want to get myself involved. But it's when we get involved, when we call, truth to power.
Tasha's becoming Congressman John Lewis telling her children, go out and get in good trouble. Get in good trouble.
Yes, yeah. It's like you have to agitate. If you don't agitate towards it, if you don't let people call out wrong when it's happening, it's just going to continue. So it's just that same place, same thing. What's going on now? We have to say something.
I wonder, though,
a lot of struggles that Asian Americans have been going through for decades, but it doesn't hit headline news all the time.
Exactly.
There have been a number of lawsuits that were launched against Harvard, Yale, other schools that discriminated against Asian American admissions. Those are applicants. It was so bad that they went to court. Both schools were brought to court about it. And this all happened in the early 2000s, major lawsuits. Unfortunately, the rest of the story is they didn't win them, but they should have been won, and they should have been headline news. When Blacks were discriminated against entering school systems and colleges, we made a big enough fuss about it that it became headline news. But Asian Americans have been going through the same thing for many, many years.
I'm wondering, because the first thing that happened when that sheriff came out and said what he said, people said, "You're racist. He's a racist." And I'm wondering if the epithet racist now may be getting overused to the point where it is actually preventing us from making corrections we need to make. The Sharon Osbourne situation, the ladies on The Talk, the way she acted towards Cheryl Underwood. I mean, was based on the fact that she just refused to accept that she could be a racist. And maybe it's time for us to create some degrees or some categories, like racist to the third degree, racist to, something like that, because everybody is impacted by race in America. You can't be alive and not be. To what degree then are you a racist? Now, the sheriff might say, I'm not a racist, because to him, a racist is somebody with a hood and a robe and a burning cross.
Right.
And so maybe we need to figure out how to articulate with a greater level of eloquence how a person is responding to or reacting to their exposure to or their cooperation with racism. And if you blow on that cup, Pat, people will not know that it's wine. They'll think it's hot chocolate. So,
Tally, I was going to tell you, why don't you come up with the definition of racism, since you and Webster's dictionary are close friends.
It's good point. Good point. I'll call Webster.
Yeah, give him a call. You know what? I look at it and I see that there were, from the time of the pandemic, there were 3,800 or so hate crimes. Mm-hmm. And ABC News reported that. But then there's also crimes that have not been reported because they are afraid to report them.
Yep.
They don't want to report them because they don't see them as being, it doesn't rise. The report says, and I'm reading it here, it doesn't rise to the legal definition of hate crime. You know what I'm saying? So if you're walking down the street and you push an Asian person or you push a black person or whatever, and we may call it a minor assault or third degree assault or something of that nature. So they don't see the need to go through the red tape of all of that. But I think it's dangerous. I think that our churches need to speak up about it. I think, especially with the Tay ethnic group that we have in Allegheny East Conference, we should be loud about that. Not just an announcement about it, but we need to let our Asian brothers and sisters know more than we care for them, but their family. That we won't stand for any of that.
Yeah, this is when we really show that they're truly our brothers and sisters. Sure. We say it in times of peace, but when they're going through something, are we stepping up and being by their side when that happens? Yeah,
especially those from Korea, because after all, many of them are from a city where they are actually our soul brothers. Okay, that just went right by everybody.
No. Yeah, I got it. It hit me right where the cup is. I'm good, man. We're good.
So since we've established that white supremacy is the enemy and we need to battle this fight together, what do we have to do to, literally get to the point where we as a nation acknowledge the danger of white supremacy? So just a few days ago, a man from Texas was found outside of where Kamala Harris would be living. That's under renovation right now, found with AR-15 rifle, 113 rounds of unregistered ammunition, and 5 30-round magazines. And so white supremacy is dangerous. They are angry. They are upset. They don't like what they see, the changing tides in our nation, and they're willing to take out anybody. So what can we do to get to the point where we acknowledge the real danger of white supremacy?
I don't know if this is just being ticky-tack with words, but I think injustice is the enemy. White supremacy is an expression, a very virulent and deadly and toxic expression of injustice or bigotry. But it is difficult to get people. Racism and white supremacy benefits a class of people, the vast majority of whom would never burn a cross and never wear a white robe. Right. And so they don't want to be identified with that level of it. And so how do you get people to own the fact that their advantages are accrued by the few extremists in their bunch? You
mean privilege? Do you mean
the privilege? Yeah, white privilege, white entitlement, or any. Look, there are 4 of us on this screen right now who function with some advantage that comes from male entitlement.
Yep.
But none of us would want to be called chauvinistic, or none of us would want to be called misogynistic. But the fact of the matter is, we do benefit from it.
Sure.
I think we also need to understand that white supremacy is a brand of prejudice. It's just one of many brands.
Yeah.
It's not all white supremacy. I mean, the pathology of human beings is that we fight. We fight against each other. We're very territorial. We're very protective of our own.
Mhm.
And sometimes we also forget about the class wars. There are class wars that all colors are involved in.
Hmm.
There are classes of African Americans, classes of Latinos. You've got Spanish that don't consider themselves part of the Latin community. You know, Puerto Rican. You call us Spaniard or Puerto Rican, he's insulted. That's not to say that, you know, your where you were born is being discounted. But if you're considered a Latino, you know, you're put in a class.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
You know, blacks are put in a class, and even there's financial classes. There's the middle class, there's the upper class, the lower class, the middle. I mean, we come up with all of these classifications, and we wear these tags, sometimes unknowing. We just wear these class, and we practice it. We practice it amongst our own about class discrimination. We don't call it that.
And that's why I said education, Chuck, is the key. You
Yeah.
know, I think that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, nothing's going to change. I think we just have to be able to talk to our children and work on the next generation that's coming through. The next generation, you know, may have a problem with regional conferences. The next generation may have, I mean, let's be realistic. And I've heard this before, you know, they don't see a reason for it. I'm not saying there should be or should not be, but, and not bringing in that stick. But the point with all of this is that we do put ourselves in different classes. But like Tally says, there's a benefit behind it. But then if there's a benefit behind it, what is the negative side of it? There has to be a positive and there has to be a negative towards even Black pride.
Right.
I was talking to somebody yesterday who was whose mother is white, father is Black, and was shunned in a Black academy because coming through the 90s, you know, it was not about gold, but it was about Black medallions. You know, it was about Public Enemy. It was about, you know, Africa Bambaataa in the hip hop world. So just yesterday, after this person's in her 40s, who's telling me that she was still hurt by what she had gone through back then. It's in our church. It's in our society. I'm sorry, super sorry what has happened at the spa, but it's not going to stop unless somebody, whether federal or on his way down, says something about it from the pulpit, from those who have social media influence have to say something about it. Now, I understand Kirk Franklin and what happened with his son, but this is deep. This is
Yeah. And just to go along with what you're saying, I think part of, to address your question, GP, is we have to not allow the narrative to be changed. You know, just in this situation where, oh, it wasn't a racist thing. He just had a bad day and was trying to manage his sex addiction. You know, that's what they want the narrative to be. But when we know that the narrative is not really that there's a deeper issue that needs to be brought up,
Right.
we need to be on the forefront of pointing out what it is, not letting the media or certain groups of people spin it to the point where we're not even seeing what's really before us. We have to be a little bit more with that. And as Christians, you kind of alluded to it, Pat. You know, sometimes, you know, the Bible said, you know, people will become lovers of themselves. What's the scripture? You know, the love of many will wax cold. Like, these things are going to happen. Hate's going to happen. That's why we live in this sinful world. Sometimes as Christians, we use that to become apathetic to what's happening to people and not feeling like, well, this is just the evil world in which we live. But God has still called us as Christians to
Absolutely.
advocate for our brothers and sisters, to speak against
Absolutely.
what's wrong when it happens. And we just have to be careful that, you know, we're not that silent group praying in the background for Jesus to come back while our brothers and sisters are suffering right in front of us. I think that's really where we need to be as Christians in this thing.
Very good,
Indeed.
Pastor Hewitt. I think
Well,
I think we ought to keep in mind that mainstream corporate sponsored media
that's right.
has a lot to do with how we think.
mhm.
That's right.
You know, Noam Chomsky wrote a book called Manufactured Consent.
Hmm.
A lot of times people don't know that they are a racist or become a racist
Mhm.
based on sound bites.
Hmm.
Sound bites. You hear sound bite, and yeah, I agree with that. And you have no clue as to what you're agreeing to. So we are swayed by corporate media. And we need to understand that, you know, a lot of news outlets, it doesn't matter, pick one, MSNBC, Fox, whatever.
Yep.
People stare at those screens and they form their opinions based on so-called experts and reporters.
Hmm.
We need to think independently, pray to the Lord to help us to right our attitude towards other human beings.
Wow.
I had to go through it as I was growing up, and many of us, I'm sure, have had to have that challenge. But we have to be independent thinkers and allow the Lord to work with us in our spirit so that we can rise above the manufactured consent that we get from everyday life.
You know, now that you're talking about Bible like that, it kind of reminds me of the Good Samaritan, right? As you say that, you know, look who passed by, the first who passed and the second who passed, right? And the one who actually helped out, which is not among the class that that they expected to help out. You know, I think about Lisa Ling, who did a series, I think a 4-part series on CNN on massage parlors, of Asian massage parlors.
Hmm.
I sometimes think to myself, you said media. That's what made me bring that up. Media wise, did it cheapen the parlors? There's sex trafficking that's going on in the parlors. Do they now, because she put that out there, did that? And she is her own. I'm saying, you know, this was not it's reported by her own. Did she, instead of trying to awaken people of what's going on with sex trafficking, did it bring up the pornography and the sex addiction in men to decide, okay, now I'm going to cheapen the reason why people kill each other is because they cheapen them as a soul. You understand what I'm saying? So I go back to what you said before, Chuck, and even what I was talking about with African Bombada and the whole hip hop thing that was going through. Media kind of gauge the way that we treat one another. And this is why you're right. I know you brought in the spiritual aspect of it, and those who are listening to us, you gotta do some soul searching to who you don't like or why you don't like. And I know that time is going, but I wanted to share this why I want to be vulnerable with you. It took me a long time to like Indian or South Asian. It was Indian because when I was 16 years old, I worked for. He was my manager in a CVS back then. He was so mean to me that it took me to have a friend that was South Asian. Am I saying the right word? South Asian from India?
Yeah. You know, from the Indian subcontinent of
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, but look, it took 30 odd years for me to get to the point of recognizing that I didn't like them because of that reason.
Isolated case, yeah.
One isolated case made me say, you know what, I don't like any of them at all. To the point, I mean, I even had a teacher a couple of months ago that I really had to ask God, is this where I need to be? The reason why I'm bringing that out is because you have to do soul searching. We're talking about white supremacy, but what do we have in our own hearts against people and know where it comes from to be able to heal? That's really where the word comes in, to be able to heal.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's deep.
Well, I think the moral is look at the person in the mirror.
Right.
Ask yourself, where do I stand with prejudice and hate and evil?
Yep.
Because until Jesus comes, we've not arrived.
Well said.
Yeah. Hey, Siri, play Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror.
Siri said, I am not that old.
No, but that's true. That's true. This has been one of those great conversations, guys. This is one of those cases where it's good to be upset. This is something good to be upset about. But after you're done being upset, what are you going to do about it? And so we hope that this conversation has sparked something in you, our viewers and listeners, that when you see hate on any side in any situation, that you're called to speak against it, and to also, as we said, self-examine some areas in your life where you may need to do some work. We're all guilty of that, and so that's what we do. So if you're listening to this, you have some comments. As always, we like to invite you to share them. You can email us at upset@aecsd.com. You can comment where you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. We do read the comments, and we are going to have a show very soon where we're talking about some of the things that you shared with us. So don't forget to let us know your thoughts on this issue. All right, guys. Thanks once again for another great conversation. We look forward to doing it next week.
Always good.
All right.
Till next time.
Take care, everybody.